Welcome to Vija Please, Havel Voyage through the Delta Quadrant. My name is Joseph.
I'm your co-host, Peter.
And Peter, this is, going to sound a little out of place because, of course, we record these episodes a couple weeks before the air, but you're headed to not Gen Con, you're headed to Dragon Con.
That's right. Fuck Gen Con. We are talking Dragon Con. We're going to be rolling in deep. I am on the hype train big time. Work is killing me. All I want to be doing is having super nerd mega adventure down in Atlanta. And hopefully I come back with some excellent stories. Last year, I sat in on a panel with Garrett Wang, Robert Duncan McNeil, Ethan Phillips, and who was the other person? Oh, John DeLance. Jesus, I can never remember his name. I'm going to sound like an asshole now. DeLance. I fucked you up on it too.
Tell me about Gen Con. I keep saying Gen Con. Tell me about Dragon Con overall. Like, on the scale of cons, as far as like how it's organized and its size, like, does it still have like that kind of like down to earth feel? Is that what's so good about it? Like, it's not super corporate. It's not too managed. It's a little more anarchic. A little bit more of a party atmosphere.
Yes, it is not down to earth in that anything feels real or normal. It feels like a crazy fever dream where a bunch of nerds somehow decided they wanted to throw this big party convention and thousands of people show up in droves and everything is excellent. So that does not feel grounded. But if you look at something like Comic-Con, that has basically become like a test bed for Hollywood and a launching point for, multimedia productions, it is absolutely not that. I can't recommend it enough to anybody. It is extremely hard to go to Dragon Con because there's not enough hotel rooms or Airbnbs or campgrounds in Atlanta. Like, you have to have a room reserved 369 days before Dragon Con. Like, reservations open before the next year even starts. So it's crazy. We thought our room got canceled because of a visa authorization error. So that was like a real oh shit moment, but everything got squared away. And we're rolling in with James this time. So we'll be rocking the TOS original gold, red, blue trio and just, causing trouble and having a good time.
I can't wait to hear how you managed to fit into conversation with someone there that you have a Star Trek podcast, preferably while intoxicated. Don't let us down, Peter.
Preferably a member of Voyager cast. I don't know. I don't think those guys have bodyguards. I might be able to force myself on one of them and talk their ear off. But
I don't think you'll be I don't think you'll be the first sweaty nerd to tell them that they have a Voyager podcast.
To be fair, I am sure that in the whole scope of Dragon Con, if we were to make a pie chart of who does and who does not have a podcast, the people who do not have the podcast will be the minority slice.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we are what we behold. Oh man, I was going to try and segue somehow into the episode there, and I thought I had something, but I don't. What did we watch this week, Peter?
Season 4, episode 6, The Raven.
So I think the production of this episode has an interesting pedigree that I wanted to talk about first. This is the first episode written by Brian Fuller. I have mentioned him a couple times as a positive writing force on Voyager in its latter half, and ultimately became quite a Trek guru to the point where he was slated to be the original showrunner for Discovery. Back when remember, I don't know if you remember, the original idea for Discovery is that it was going to be essentially American Horror Story, but Star Trek, in the sense that each season would be like a different ship and era.
I never heard that. And that sounds fucking amazing. And I wish that is what it was.
Yeah. So the original pitch of the show, back when Kurtzman was nowhere to be found, and it was the Brian Fuller experience, is that he wanted to do the American Horror Story type of like serialized seasons where, okay, so this season takes place in the TOS era on this ship. This might take place in like one of those intermediate eras, like, the Cardassian War, in between TOS and TNG. This happens after TNG. And the idea, of course, A, it would allow them to do more modular storytelling, and then B, in a kind of Fargo-esque move, like show you like the ancestors or descendants of characters is still in Starfleet, and of course bring in people from existing shows, like you bring in the TNG people, has happened 30 years later or whatever. That was the original pitch. That's the show he wanted to do, and I was very excited about that. I'm not surprised to hear you feel the same way.
I also want to go on record as saying that I wish that was the format of what Stranger Things is, because I personally really liked season 1 of Stranger Things, and I think season 2 and season 3 have kind of been trying to squeeze blood out of a stone. Modern TV has really turned me on to telling a short, concise, yet potent story with a beginning, a middle, and an end, instead of just trying to ride stuff out for the sake of, I assume, easier production costs or whatever. But yeah, I noticed we're talking about everything except for this episode.
Yeah,
I wonder why.
And it's also was directed by LeVar Burton.
I was sad to see that.
I'm getting the impression you're not a fan of this episode, Peter.
You must be half Beta Zed. Captain, I'm sensing negative emotions coming out of the co-host. He's not hiding something. What was the last time LeVar Burton directed something? Because it was a turkey too. What was it?
He's had nothing but absolute garbage so far on this season, or on this show. His first episode was Ex Post Facto.
Oh God!
So he tried to make the film noir detective story episode with Tuvok and Tom Paris, slam an alien puss.
Detective Tuvok, my old boring foe.
And then his second episode,
the arch nemesis of fun.
His second episode was Dreadnought.
Another, so real. I'll post a picture online just so people can see in the top secret production studios of my basement, and the professional way that I have one piece of computer paper taped to my wall with another piece of computer paper taped on top of that. And this is my my running shit list of bottom feeder episodes. And yes, Ex Post Facto and Dreadnought are both certainly on that list.
And then this. So, he's had 2 rough outings so far. I did not think this episode was bad. I think there was a lot of this episode that left a lot on the table, a lot to be desired. I think it's super meme worthy.
Well,
I got enjoyment out of that fact alone.
I just listened to our review of
Nemesis,
and your miserable fan service to the way they talked on that. So my opinion of you is already really low today.
You need to turn your trembles into rages.
They're already there. And just hearing that stuff just sets me off. So, being that my opinion of your opinion is in the gutter, I'm not surprised to hear that there were some stuff you liked about it.
I think what I liked, I liked one thing about it, and that is I think that Jerry Ryan sold at the end like the whole PTSD angle, and I think that was well done on her part. I think that clouded for me the rest of this episode being bad. Like there's this one good scene where an actress got to turn her acting on, and I'm like, oh, okay, that was well done. And then I kind of forgot that the rest of it was garbage. But now as I sit here and I'm forced to contemplate it, yeah, I think you're right.
And to think that you were the one who accused me of falling in love and losing my optics on this series. All right, man, let's start this thing. We pick up, speaking of boring shit, in Leonardo da Vinci's workshop, which we were first introduced to in Scorpion Part 1, where Janeway hatched the harebrained idea of working with the Borg and saving them from a much-needed extinction event, courtesy of species, whatever the numbers are.
8472?
The Space Mewtwo's.
Yes.
And in the shop, we've got Janeway, and we've got 7 to 9. And I'll tell you what, man, I forget who brought it up on the trauma support group, our Facebook group. But knowing that there was animosity on set between Kate Mulgrew towards Jerry Ryan, I think is just going to loom like a cloud over everything I see in between them. And from what I've been able to see about, way fans talk, it seems like there's a lot of shared scene time, screen time between these two characters, and a relationship that will blossom. And I think it's going to be very hard for me to watch it, knowing that she was being shitty.
Yeah, especially this season. Fourth season is really dominated by these two having a lot of scenes together, as they obviously try to give the viewer as much 7 of 9 backstory / TNA as possible. She's in a burgundy skin tight suit this time instead of silver, but it's still doing her all the favors in the world.
I think it's much more toned down than what that silver tinfoil booby suit was. It's much less 80s stripper, I think, but yeah, it's still so blatant. And I mean, if she's more comfortable, great. I would like to sit here and say it's ridiculous that she's not just in a uniform, but to the show's credit, you got Neelix, who's ride or die Voyager, and he's not in a uniform either. So at least there's kind of a precedent, and Kess too. But still, it is what it is, and we're all very aware. So whatever.
Speaking so I thought it interesting, of course, is that they're in the Leonardo da Vinci simulation, but they're not going to pay John Rhys Davies to be in this one. Like, they only break out the John Rhys Davies money when they really mean it. So they talk around the fact that he's not there. The idea is that Janeway is attempting to essentially teach Seven about the concept of relaxation and imagination and fucking friendship is magic. I don't know. It's, the idea, as always with these scenes, is that there's some basic tenet of humanity that 7 of 9 is not quite grasping, and Janeway is attempting to explain it to her. Like, this is interesting when it's like about understanding interpersonal relationships and why it is, the importance of humanity. But when she's going on and on about how, she needs to learn to fucking lighten up, it's like,
I would like to try and give this episode some credit. I think think that since we started talking about the Bechdel test, which is that grading scale for media where can you have two women on screen that are talking about something other than a man, I think that it's really cool that you have these scenes, especially again in late 90s television, and it's something you've ranted about before, that Star Trek has had these progressive events, these milestones way before the rest of popular media, and Star Trek just doesn't get the fair credit for it. So that's neat. And I want to read into this relationship at this point a little bit and flesh it out. Can you see Janeway having scenes or giving any sort of time or attention that she's showing to 7 and 9 to any other person on this crew?
I cannot. However, I will say that 7 of 9 represents a singularly unique opportunity for two things for her that I think makes sense for her character as established. One, Catherine Janeway is an accomplished scientist. This is a unique opportunity for her to understand the process of how the Borg work, how people are assimilated, and how can they can be de-assimilated, whatever the right turn of phrase is for that. And so her devoting the time to trying to reach 7 and understand how that works makes sense from that perspective. Second, we are aware that Catherine Janeway does not have a family, in the sense that she's not married. She has no children. And quite frankly, this represents a sort of mothering, nurturing opportunity for her.
And here you thought the only person who would want to mother and nurture AI or robot people was B'Elanna.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Seeing robot gimp suits as her children. But I think that it is entirely intended on the part of the producers to have Janeway in a position where she is essentially guiding Seven of Nine as she might guide a child. Maybe not like direct mothering, so to speak, but something sort of parallel to it.
I had two reasons for this that I was drawing in my own head. One was there is a responsibility on Janeway to prove that all of the needless risk that she's taken in bringing a Borg drone onto the ship is going to pay off. And that, this is entirely on her, the decision to do this. And that if there is a bad event or a failure to integrate or some other problem that arises out of this, it's going to be directly on her hands. So she has to have this personal accountability for getting this former drone copacetic with the rest of the crew. And
to that point, by the way, Ed, to show how correct you are about that one, Chakotay throws that shit back in her face in this episode later on, but continue.
And two, there has been some heavy groundwork. I will recognize that this is not a good episode, but I will also recognize that Brian Fuller, and again, the power of what you can produce and what you can put on a script when you take the time to read what has come before you. And I don't think we really need to hypothesize anymore of what if this is what they were thinking, or what if that was what they were thinking, and knowing damn well that wasn't the case. Like, now that there's people who are involved in this show that have bothered to watch the previous episodes, I think we're good to say there's a concerted effort to try and create continuity here. The second thing is there's been a lot of groundwork laid for Janeway about how lonely she feels on the ship, that she has walled herself off from the rest of the crew, and that when she tried to get involved and be friendly, it kind of backfired in her face. And I want to say it was the episode where the Trabe fucked him over, and that kind of made her put her walls back up.
I feel like it was even earlier than that. I felt like it was like that was like a season.
It was
one.
a Kazon episode. I think it was maybe if it wasn't Alliances, maybe it was something earlier. But she's had very specific captain's logs about I can't afford to be their friends. I need to be a leader, and that means keeping a distance. And now that there's another person that kind of exists outside of the crew, I think that gives her the opportunity to be warm with someone without compromising her stance as the captain at large. But I do think you tapped into something pretty powerful with your first point. Almost to the point that there might be a hidden agenda. Janeway's been pretty tricky and pretty nefarious in the past with some of her dealings, that she's popped up on people that you didn't even think was on her radar. Yeah, man, if she's actually has this hidden agenda where it's how do we deprogram and decultize the Borg? Is this a weapon we can wield? Maybe not a weapon, this is some pretty deep in the paint R&D she's conducting here.
The scene wraps when Seven of Nine has a vision, essentially. She's staring at the Da Vinci flying machine model, and she kind of has this strange callback to someone calling her actual name. You clearly hear someone calling her Annika. She seems to be in some Borg corridors. Some Borg drones are chasing her, and there is a large black bird, clearly a raven, that's flying towards her. And she's, as I said, the part of this episode I liked was that Jerry Ryan does a great job of going through different kind of emotional states as she deals with what's going on in the episode. And in this instance, she's kind of concerned about that this is happening to her, and that's subtly conveyed through her reaction to it.
Joe, I want you to try and count off for me the number of times that somebody on a Star Trek TV show has started having hallucinations, and it turned out to be okay. Or
it turned out to be nothing?
It turned out...
Zero? Fucking zero?
Yeah. Where it turned out to be something other than someone trying to hijack the ship or going on a fucking rampage.
Well, okay.
I'll give you a cast.
Counselor Troy
Which
definitely
time?
had the psychic visions when she's trying to solve the murder. That, she was because the murder happened down in the warp core.
The warpness back. And I will point out that series of hallucinations ended with her almost jumping into the fucking plasma stream. So that my point being, as soon as
Hey,
people
she was
start
trying to take over the ship. She was just trying to solve a crime.
No, she was trying to kill herself, man. It ended in her almost committing suicide, and they had to fucking like gang tackle her to get her down. Like, once someone starts having hallucinations, put them in secured quarters or the holodeck and trick them in. Like, if you're having hallucinations, no good will come of it ever, ever, ever. I promise you. Let alone your Terminatrix, Borg, could be assassin, hairbringer of doom. If Data starts
the idea that we're gonna. Let's call 7 of 9 the Terminatrix.
Yeah, that's what I thought we already called her that. Oh well,
we have, but let's make it official. Like, she's the Terminatrix.
Yeah, man. Anytime Data starts wigging out, like if I was Picard after like the 4th time he took the ship over or went on a rampage and threw Worf through some doors, I'd be like, "I'm sorry, you're having hallucinations. Yeah, let's go ahead and I don't know, like get a bicycle lock and hook you up to the radiator over there or something." 7 of 9's in that same camp of like catastrophic shit's gonna happen if this person gets off their rocker, but she has the vision. She reports it, which we always applaud when people are like, "Oh, something goofy just happened," and the rest of the crew's like, "We're going to react somewhat supportively and take you down to sickbay, and we're going to get you checked out."
So they end up in sickbay, and 7 describes what's happening to her. The confusion for her is that she claims that she was not afraid of the Borg. She was Borg. She sees them as her people. Janeway and the Doctor quickly ascertain that this would seem to be a PTSD related trauma as a consequence of her, dealing with the reemergence of her human personality. It's going to have to start to rationalize the things that happened to her. I guess, and I think this goes to Brian Fuller's strength as a writer, is that that's ultimately true. That right there, like, they nailed it at the beginning of what's going on. Now, there is a beacon summoning thing that we'll get into in a little bit. So there's like a bit of a technical MacGuffin that helps propel the plot a little bit. But quite frankly, they're correct right here. That is what's happening to her. She's worried about what's happening to her and conveys that in a very, muted way, but clear enough.
I'll tell you what else is clear enough, and it's something that I don't know if there's notes on her or whatever, but I have never really noticed them put any other character in profile shot as much as they are with her. And the more we talk about the silly outfits that they have her in and the other heavy-handed sexual innuendo they try to carry along with these 7 and 9 scenes, like, really start paying attention to the photography in this, because we've already identified it as gratuitous. We know what it is, but it bashes me over the head
every fucking time.
Every time. It's either the camera centered chest level on her or her standing perfectly at an angle, so you just have this constant silhouette. And my wife commented on it, and I had already had it in my notes. I think this sickbay scene really drives it home. But so while
they have the camera pulled out in every single scene she's in.
Yeah,
they did it. They did it in the holodeck scene. They started from behind her in like 3/4. So guess what? Her ass is right there, right at the beginning of the scene.
Yeah,
I mean, they do it every chance they get, and like, it is. I don't think it's necessarily just us noticing it. Because their photography in the first 3 seasons was so consistent in the half body shot, close up shot, reverse shot, kind of in the same shot composition type of, the house style was always very similar.
Yes.
Now that it's changing and they're pulled out because they want to show, Jerry Ryan's tits off as much as they can, it's noticeable. And I don't think that's weird to notice.
It keeps taking me out of whatever they're trying to lay down. So that's plot 1, right? Is what's wrong with the Terminatrix. Plot 2 is what's up with these ugly ass aliens.
These motherfuckers, the Bromar, they're like, my wife called them the Cleveland Browns. And I think that's what they need to be. They're these goofy motherfuckers.
The Cleveland Bromars.
The Cleveland Bromars. They've got, some shit on their head, some shit on their hands. They're wearing
hotel carpeting.
Yes, excellent. And then they have these weird wireframe helmets on that have a little
stained
like
glass.
A kicker's face mask and like little mirrors. Yeah, little mirrors on the sides.
These guys, if you remember the first time we encountered the Cardassians in Next Gen, they look nothing like the Cardassians that would come to be heavily featured in Deep Space Nine. And one of the guys, actually they all had these goofy wireframe helmets on that were just stupid. And that's what these guys look like. They kind of look like, what were they from Insurrection? The Sorna? The Vidian prototypes?
Sona. Yeah, the Sona.
They kind of look like that a little bit, like not the patchwork skin, but like the stretchy face. And not only do these guys look like shit, but they act like shit. These are some of the most dickhead, asshole. I got a quick story. And I'm going to say an apology to anybody who has ever tried to listen to our podcast in the car with children. We certainly do not record these episodes with any sort of consideration for language. And I was trying to listen to the podcast, and I was driving to work in the morning, and I had to take my daughter with me to work for an hour while my wife was at a work meeting. And I completely forgot that she was in the back seat, and she's like 2 years old and 2 months. So she's doing a lot of parroting, and man, one of us dropped an F-bomb, and she picked right up on it, and she's in the backseat just fucking shit. I'm like, oh no. No. All right, honey, we're not listening to Daddy's Nerd Podcast anymore. On to the radio. So to anybody who we've triggered their toddlers to start swearing, a deep, heartfelt apology. I'm very sorry. But these motherfuckers, these guys are dickheads with no equal. Like, these are the worst, most obnoxious guys I think we've ever seen come on the ship. And we've seen some real turds on the ship.
We have. I will say though that the main dude, the counselor or prime minister or whatever, he may have my all-time favorite line ever delivered at Janeway. Like, when shit pops off later and shit goes wrong, and I cannot wait to talk about that. He straight up tells Janeway, "I question your competence."
Oh yeah, straight up.
Like, how did you let all of this happen? And I'm like, in that moment, I'm like, you know what? These guys aren't so bad. Like,
yeah, when I'm saying they're dickheads and assholes,
like they see it.
They look stupid and they act annoying, but that's not to say they aren't enjoyable on screen. I would say, yeah, their attitude is terrible, but I think they're a welcome addition into what I'm seeing happening on the bridge. So yeah, we've got Janeway trying to negotiate with these guys, saying, look, we want to cut a deal to get through your space. And they're like, okay, well, we weren't going to do it, but you're in luck that we are going to allow you. But we've got some super strict rules. You can't go faster than warp 3. You got to turn off all your weapon systems. You got to stop for inspections. You're not allowed to talk to anybody except for military craft. Oh, and here's this cockamamie flight plan that's going to have you zigzagging all over the place, so you are in the least populated regions of our space always. And they don't really say how long this should take for them to fly through space if it's a straight line. But the worst case scenario is if they don't go into their space, it adds 3 months. And to that, I said, who the fuck cares about 3 months on your 70-year journey when you just got spotted 10 years by Kess? And even my wife said, like, who cares? Like, it's going to take him forever to get home. What do they care about 3 months?
Yeah, especially since these guys will spend months just fucking dicking around. Yeah. You know, like doing science shit or going back and forth to pick up the captain while, you know,
6
Chakotay
months.
Desperate gets cock blocked by a fucking monkey.
6 months. And also, too, remember, at least in this case, she's even bothering to ask permission to go in there. It was Swarm where Janeway's like, fuck the Federation. We don't stand for bullies. We're just going to fly through this region of space in a hostile manner. Consequences be damned. So at least she's kind of learning. But as soon as these guys start laying these heavy rules on the floor, like, tell them to fuck off. Just fly the extra 3 months. Even my wife's like, this is silly. This is a dumb these people are dumb. Don't deal with them.
Janeway starts to try and like negotiate with him and all that. Like, there's a whole thing developing. Meanwhile, 7 of 9 goes to lunch, and this scene is hilarious. So I loved it. Not because it was good, because it was unintentionally bad. 7 of 9 is told that she needs to start eating human food. She's reached the point in the assertion of her humanness that she needs to consume nutrients. So she goes to the mess hall, and we have her first scene with Neelix. And Neelix is trying to be the friendly neighborhood cook / morale officer and convince, 7 of 9 eat his nasty fucking space cat food. And 7 of 9 replies by commenting on the first time the Borg ever assimilated Talaxians.
Yeah, so it's 29 Talaxians had been assimilated, and this goes back to an earlier concern I had, like how much of the Borg collective's history is she able to realistically keep in her head? Like, this moves into some silly directions, like in Day of Honor, where she's able to whip up a little plasma relay doodad from memory to get the boneheads to leave them alone so they could go back and get their warp core. Like, she's got this detailed first encounter of the Borg's dealings with the Talaxians. And it's going to become silly later on, because if she has this total recall on everything the collective seems to have known, then how does the entire second half of this episode, where she goes back to, a Borg incident and has no memory of it?
I think the answer to that is twofold. One, she knows what the collective thinks is important, which plays out in the scene, right? Like, she has encyclopedic knowledge of technology, but she doesn't know actually how to eat, because why would Borg care about that? So it's not part of the knowledge that the collective allowed her to retain. She didn't need to know that as a drone, so she doesn't, But it might in some way be relevant to know about Talaxians, their species designation, and the Borg's interaction with them in the past. So she knows that. She knows how to, fix things on the ship and make technological improvements.
But spoiler, at the end we find out that, the whole thing of this is going to boil down to their first encounter with humanity, which is when she gets assimilated. Like, shouldn't she know goddamn well what the Raven is and what that planet is and the significance of all of that?
I think that's part of per her personal PTSD, though. Like, that's the thing.
Maybe.
That is the intersection of her Borgness and her humanness, and that is why it is traumatic. Like, that specific instance.
Maybe. But let's get back to this cringe fest of a drawn out shot here.
The real cringe fest is the fact that Neelix says he's going to steam his nasty cat food, and instead he fucking fries it.
Stir fries it.
Well, yeah.
Listen, have you ever operated a hobo trash can fire food preparation unit before?
Truthfully, I have not.
Okay, well then I don't think it's fair for you to say that you know how those things operate. I mean...
well, you know what? I take it back. I think you could probably accurately describe my grill that way at this point.
Well, I mean, I think until you've operated a hobo trash can fire yourself, that it's unfair for you to say what is and is not a steaming functionality. Maybe you're just not familiar with that device's operation, and that's why you're just assuming. You're assuming that's how
true.
You steam it.
Hashtag trash can fire privilege. You got me. You did it.
Hashtag stove privilege. So he makes this stuff up for her, and this is why this scene specifically is why I'm very disappointed to see LeVar Burton's name attached to this episode, because there's a lot of stuff that I think is outside the director's ability to control, but the amount of time that he dedicated to this scene needlessly. And man, we've done some backstory and we've done some character development episodes for other characters in this show, and none of that stuff can come anywhere near this episode with a 10-foot pole. That's how far outside of the scope of character development this is, where we're sitting there for like 5 minutes watching her slowly eat, scrambled eggs or whatever that stuff was. Like, there is I get that this is the new toy in the Voyager toolbox or toy box, but man, I don't think we need to go this deep in it. And when you take stuff like we're going to learn how to eat and we're going to put all this time into this episode, and then you combine it with other stuff like the ongoing angst she feels at, does she want to be in the Borg? Does she want to be in the crew? Who is she? My wife said it feels like they've been doing the same thing for 4 episodes now, and I don't know how many episodes it's really been, but it's already tiring. And I can't help but agree. And watching her sit there and learn how to eat scrambled eggs under the tutelage of a space cat is not what I signed up for when I came to Star Trek.
I agree. This scene, like the eating part of the scene, goes on way too long. I think the interaction between her and Neelix was good because they haven't had a scene yet together. And so, like, having her, like, awkward, weird inability to socialize.
Where he shows her how to swallow.
Before that, like, the conversation they have when he's trying to convince her, like, to eat and how the enjoyment of food. And, she's, like, just suddenly, like, without anything else to contribute to the conversation, just starts talking about Talactes getting assimilated. That was fun. The few minutes they spend on the fucking eating and swallowing and like, okay, take the little shuttle into the shuttle bay. Like, okay, great.
The fun part of their interaction is when when the Terminatrix chokeslams Neelix to the floor. And it's been a while since we've watched someone rough up Neelix. And, before anybody at home gets concerned, it's okay. It's consensual. We know that Neelix is a masochist. I'm sure that that gave him spank bank material for the next 2 months.
Yeah, he was definitely talking about how he wanted to be turned into B'Elanna's bitch boy, and he could just call her mama and say that he wants it more. Just like 2 episodes ago, 3 episodes ago, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. So this fits right into his fetish.
Yeah. So she has another one of her hallucinations, and this time she's like hiding under a table and she's like trying to dodge Borg linebackers in slow motion. And she finally snaps out of it when this Borg echo memory says, I don't know what the trigger is, but then you see this bulge, this bubble under her skin burrow up her forearm around her wrist, and some piece of Borg nanotechnology, not nano at that point, it's the size like a silver dollar, rips its way out of the skin, flips open. She's got this little assimilation mark on her, and it's like a switch flips in her, and she goes into Terminatrix mode and does the aforementioned choke slam to Neelix to the floor and just beelines it out of mess hall. Meanwhile, Janeway's trying to negotiate with the Cleveland Bromars, and it's clear that she's not feeling this little goofy flight plan they have and this is what I thought was interesting. She gets called to the bridge, and as she walks into the bridge, the whole bridge is like lights dimmed, flashing red lights, red alert. Does it not, the rest of the ship get red alert warnings when red alert goes off?
It should. I think they might have just accidentally not shot that when they did the prior scene, and then didn't want to go back and do it. But yeah, all the red alert stuff is flashing when she gets to the bridge. And then what follows here, we have, over the course of our now 75 episodes, Peter, said so much about Tuvok's absolute and undeniable incompetence when it comes to ship security. Now, we know the reason why this happens, because it's the same reason it happens to Worf all the time, is that the ship security has to be overcome for the bad thing to happen. And so the ship security officer is always in a position where they got to get hot game run on them all the time for anything to be a threat. Otherwise, it would just not be a threat anymore.
I'm not going to hold Tuvok accountable for anything that happens here, with one exception, because this is classic Voyager ramrodding and the technology scale that they've established not being respected. Terminatrix goes on a rampage. She starts beelining towards weapons lockers. It's very clear that they have had eyes and I'll give Tuvok credit on that they've had eyes on Seven of Nine in this capacity, and that while Janeway has very high aspirations and beliefs of what can happen, I think the rest of the crew is rightfully weary that it's still a Borg drone, and like a dog that's tasted blood, they never know when it's going to snap and turn on you.
And Chakotay literally says that early on in the episode. I mentioned it before, but we have a return of Chakotay, the opposite of a fan of Seven of Nine.
The guy who tried to blow her out of an airlock, Chakotay.
Yeah, where he basically says, this may not be a battle you can win with her. She may just decide to go back to the Borg someday. Like straight up, just like, yeah, she might fuck us. Like she might just go fuck off. Like whatever. You can't predict what's going to happen with the mangy dog you brought on board.
It's real talk too, and it's what I liked when Chakotay said back in Scorpion, like, hey, look, maybe this is the limit of how far we get in the Delta Quadrant. Maybe this is where we need to fall back and circle the wagons and think about this, like some real reasonable stuff. And Janeway just fucking ignores them, and it's infuriating.
That's why I think when I initially sat down and recorded this with you, I was mostly favorably disposed towards the episode, even if I know it had some serious flaws, is because there's this great writing in establishing the continuity of these characters' beliefs about things, and the return of the Chakotay, the anti-Borg doubter, who suddenly went away a couple episodes ago when Seven of Nine got detailed to work in engineering or some shit when she's still half Borged up.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the effort that went into trying to make the show more cohesive.
So with these new what is it? With the new space
Borg pixie
dust that she has magically inhaled somewhere, she is now spontaneously generating new Borg augmentations that are wildly more powerful than anything else we've ever seen before. And security intercepts her in the hallway. And in what is, I would say, easily the worst scene of the entire episode, you got two security officers. They both take stun shots at her. And we find out that regular old Terminatrix now has personal body shields. So the phaser shots are just absorbed. Normally, like when Borg gets shot, the first phaser blast always lands and takes the Borg out. And then they all modulate from that point and their shields become invincible after that. Right off the bat, boom, boom, she deflects both of them. And these security dudes just stand by and let her walk by. There's no attempt to tackle or anything. That's what I lay at Tuvok's feet. He needs to discipline these guys. They are not committed to sparkle motion. They're letting Borgs. This is worst case scenario for real. Fucking Borg on your ship flipping out, going towards the gun cabinet. You could at least pull a classic Superman thug move where you shoot the phaser, it doesn't work, and then you just throw the phaser and watch it bounce off her. These guys do nothing. They stand to the side and just let her cruise through.
Yeah, guys, dudes, there are space horrors out there. It's just gonna be well, I guess they're gonna fucking eat the brain of everyone on deck 7. Yeah. So guys, just give her an arm bar. Give her a little WWE. Come off the top turnbuckle and see what you can do.
How are you gonna go back to the security barracks without even so much as a black eye and not feel ashamed of yourself and what you did at your job today? But not only does she have new Borg shields, she just has new Dungeon Master shields. And whatever possible security precautions could have been on the table. And again, I think Tuvok, they really put the full gamut of how does the Federation stop an invader? I think short of trying to lock on with a transporter and beam her off into space, which is what I'm sure Chakotay knows should have happened, they put up force fields and they turn off turbo lifts and everything else. And she just walks through all of that like a hot knife through butter.
Then your boy, Smoldering Catcher guy, a random mother extra, and Tuvok all surround the turbo lift that she's supposed to come out. And they mentioned specifically turning their phasers onto rotating modulations, which usually means you can get some shots off on a Borg. And she comes out and they have the world's worst fucking firefight where they all take these pot shots at point blank range at her and it doesn't work.
And she's gunning from the hip very slow and methodically. And my wife asks, well, is her gun on stun? And I said, well, I'm sure they didn't just kill Tuvok. She's like, did they just kill a major guy off screen? And I'm like, that would be legit as fuck if that's how they wrote Tuvok off the show. But no, unexplainedly, the rampaging Borg Terminatrix, there's still enough humanity in the old well for her not to put it on disintegrate, even though she's got, the phaser rifle that is only there to disintegrate stuff. And
I think that's like your first real clue that she's not like gone full native. It's some psychological trauma she's dealing with. But they
it's
don't
a PG-13 show or whatever.
But they don't mention like, hey, she stunned you guys with that phaser rifle. She didn't kill you like on purpose. There's something going on here. We need to go get her. Like some kind of line there really needed
That's
to be
crucial.
said.
That is a great observation. And I think had something like that been in there, it would have made the rest of what we're going to see happen a little bit more reasonable to believe. Because up to this point, with the exception of her stunning people, I mean, she's just shooting people. She's ripping doors off hinges. She's forcing her way and like hacking everything. She does a site-to-site transport of her own volition and like gets onto a Type 6 shuttlecraft and blows a hole in the fucking main shuttle bay. It's the only shuttle bay in the shuttle bay door and flies off. And it's like a complete fumble. And it's like, oh gosh, maybe having, psychotic Borg drones on board as pets was a bad idea after all. And all of this goes down right in front of the Cleveland Bromars.
Yeah, they are very unimpressed by Voyager and obviously talk shit about the fact that they have a Borg, former Borg drone on board. And the scene after Seven makes her grand escape into her, I guess that she took off with like a Type 2. The Type 6. And they follow her in the Type 9. It's like specifically. You can see the difference in the shot later. They had story the scene where the guy's like, I question your competence about being able to do this. And then they reveal like, oh, we're tracking her because we've got this great sensor net that we've got erected across all of our borders that make it so that we know if there's like even a speck of dust that comes through.
These are not the guys that Romulans want as neighbors. I'll tell you that right now. I love the fact that she flies into their space too. Like that was one of the other things I appreciated about this. Day of Honor was like, what is the worst day of work possible for B'Elanna Torres? Like, this is the worst day of work possible for Catherine Janeway.
Getting embarrassed in front of the semi-hostile aliens and having a diplomatic crisis and her fucking Borg parenting project suddenly fucking off and wrecking everything along the way.
And I mean,
that's pretty bad.
Let's go back to the next door reputation for Voyager, Delta Quadrant next door. You've got a pet Borg that is prone to go rogue. Like, can you imagine knowing that there's a ship in your space or along the border with a pet fucking Borg and that thing escapes and now it's loose somewhere in your space? Like, what if it contacts the collective and brings a fucking cube up? What if this thing's like a zombie running around just jabbing people in the throat and starting an assimilation crisis? Like, this, it's like they're flying around with like the bubonic plague being held in Christmas tree ornaments strewn about the ship. Like, you're just asking for something bad to happen.
Right. And maybe like some horror on their part of like, how fucking dare you bring a goddamn Borg into our space?
Absolutely.
Are you insane?
Absolutely.
They're almost too nice about it. Like, by the way, the Cleveland Bromars are probably the most ineffective race that we've seen in terms of space combat. So their haughty nature is undeserved, because what happens is that they do catch up with 7 of 9, but in a shuttlecraft, she manages to take out 5 of their ships.
Well, to be fair, I'm sure she like super duper hot rodded the shuttlecraft. Keep in mind, she did extensive modifications to Voyager and Scorpion Part 2 in like the course of half an hour or whatever. So,
but even later on, when Voyager itself shows up, they just like effortlessly just disable these ships. There's not even a real fight. They're just like, attack the weapons until they're fucking done. Oh, they're done? Great. We've disabled them all. Like, it seems to be trivial on their part. They have to bring like 58 ships to actually be a threat to Voyager.
68. And Yeah, so once they're gone and Janeway's stuck to have to come up with a plan on how to do this, then she's like, I've dedicated a team to sweeping Cargo Bay 2 and finding out what's going on. So am I led to believe then that at no point did you ever really go over everything in that cargo bay with a fine-tooth comb to see is there anything dangerous or feeding rogue commits?
Yeah, did the Borgs leave any fucking booby traps for us?
Yeah.
Really?
Like,
It's the first time we're gonna fucking check? Really?
The previous tenors who were psychotic, murderous squatters, they all got blown out into space, and, we just haven't had the time to get in there and straighten up yet. So it's the first time I've really seen Starfleet get in there with tricorders, and Harry finds, I don't know, B'Elanna ribs him a little bit because they're still kind of fostering this subplot of Harry and Seven of Nine might be a thing.
Yeah, they string this along just a tiny bit longer, unfortunately.
Thankfully, Harry does not return the teasing back to B'Elanna and dare to mention the Tom Paris B'Elanna Torres boring ass romance subplot, which I was thankful for.
But don't worry, it'll haunt us.
I know, that's why I'm taking my refuge in these episodes where I can. And they find some big goofy piece of junk metal behind one of these Borg regeneration alcoves. And they're like, oh, this seems really interesting. If only we'd found this thing 3 weeks ago. And they take it off for an examination. At this point, 7 and 9 is off rogue. The Terminatrix, which just shot the ship up and blew a fucking hole in the wall, something we haven't seen since the Kazon were running a hot game on Voyager under the tutelage of Seska, Queen of Burns. And it goes back to this this question of when is enough enough? How hard does Janeway need to stick to her guns on a losing proposition? Specifically concerning the Borg, like, when are you going to realize you fucked up and now is the time to quit and just chill out? Are you going to invade space and go to what was clearly been called, if you cross our borders, it will be considered an act of war? Are you going to go to war on behalf of the Federation with an entire local government over your rogue Borg science project? And it casts Janeway in a very incompetent light.
Well, I don't know if it's incompetent. I think that it's a defensible choice because this is ultimately, this is something that she's brought onto the ship. She made the decision to think that they could effectively de-Borg 7 of 9. That something has happened here, the extent of which is unknown, but ultimately they are responsible for whatever happens. We know that Federation people, especially Starfleet officers, tend to take personal responsibility very seriously. It's a very deep and motivating axiom for them. And so for her to say, this is my mess, I need to go clean it up because A, I owe it to the Bromar, who are now have this problem on their hands. Who
specifically forbid me from entering their space, though.
And that's where, like, the judgment call comes in, of, like, how much aggro am I willing to draw in the situation, and I've got no one to fall back on and no one to ask, so she decides to do it. And that's, supposed to reflect her deciding her personal responsibility to Seven and to deal with the situation outweighs the political risk. I don't think that's incompetence. I think that is a calculated decision that fits the available facts that we know about her as a character and that we know generally about Starfleet officers. I get it. I can definitely see where you can quibble and say it's a stupid ass decision.
But if it's a rogue Borg on a primitive planet that cannot handle the hell she just unleashed on it, sure, I get getting involved. When you've got a warp-capable, space-faring civilization that has advanced technology that has specifically told you, stay the fuck out of here, or it's going to be treated as an act of war. You already let a Borg loose on us. Just stay the fuck away. Like, I think she's really crossing the line. And what I really would have liked to see in this episode was a staff meeting where you had Chakotay or specifically Tuvok weigh on, hey, this is our recommendation to you, Captain, and put her in a place where needs to acknowledge that she's acting crazy.
I think the excessive level of Federation, compassion has to be under. I mean, this is not a new trait to Voyager, though. I mean, TNG, there were so many times that those guys had their fucking pants pulled down because they were too nice. For putting a fine point on it, you know what I mean?
But that's
so I'm not gonna dock Voyager points for doing shit that they do all the time on Star Trek.
I think all the times that TNG was put in a situation where, like, we know what the morally right thing to do here is, but this is what we have to play out because them's the rules. And I think that's always been kind of one of the cool conflicts in Star Trek. It's like we have a moral imperative, and in this case, we have to observe it. And Janeway's so picky and choosy about when she chooses to acknowledge the Prime Directive and rules and diplomacy and all that other stuff. And I think she always she's got a real cowboy streak in her. I think there's a lot of Kirk in the way that Janeway acts. Jean-Luc, I think, took it on the chin many more times than we've seen Janeway willing to ultimately have to take it. They come up with a plan. They say, look, we got a way to circumvent this detection grid. We think we're going to be all right. We're going to send a little shuttlecraft in to track her down. And we've got a hypo spray that'll knock her out, and we think we'll be good to go. So she sends out Tuvok and Paris in a shuttle that's going to go on a little Black Ops mission. And I really like the scene where basically she pulls a James Bond License to Kill and says, you bring her down, whatever it takes.
It's definitely like the indication of, if you can't bring her in, take her out, which I think belays the idea of, we are responsible for this and we will put an end to this if we must.
It's also the first time we've really seen Janeway flat out give permission for or acknowledge that murder might be the only way to resolve something.
I don't think it's the first time that she said, I'm going to kill you if I have to, because she said that to the Vidians the first time she met
but then she let him go. This is...
But she let him go, but she said, if I ever see you or any of your kind threaten my ship again, I will murder you. I'm not going to kill you in cold blood right this second because I'm incapable of that moral choice as an enlightened 24th century human. However, I am not going to spare any expense in putting my fucking boot on your neck if I am ever given any cause to do so in the future. And I think that laid a pretty good line down as far as when, it's killing time.
Yeah, but that was, you stay away from me, I'm staying away from you, and as long as we stay away from each other, we're fine.
But if you don't, I'll fucking kill you. Like,
whereas
that line was definitely
whereas
there.
This, she's like, you go find her, and if we don't have our way, then you kill her. It was different. It was different to hear a Starfleet captain say something like that, and I think it was kind of cool.
The episode climax comes when 759 blows up all the fucking stupid Bromar Browns goddamn ships.
She goes to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, Tom and
she goes to the Super Bowl, and like Galactic Justice always, the Cleveland Bromar get their asses wrecked.
Yeah, she just runs a fucking A-gap blitz and just blows them apart.
By the way, I'm from Cleveland, so I'm well aware of like the importance of shitting on the Browns. I don't know any real specifics. Joe's the football guy here, so direct any inconsistencies in what we're saying to Joe. He's the adult.
So the Bromar were in a clear passing down, and they were in a shotgun formation, and so 7 of 9 knows a weak defensive line when she sees it. Just ran the fucking linebacker right up to A gap and just about murdered the Bromar Browns quarterback. It was awful. So the Type 9 that Tom and Tuvok take to catches up. Tuvok has this harebrained scheme of, I'm going to beam on to the other fucking shuttle and like ambush her. But But Seven of Nine literally already thought of that tactic and was standing behind where Tuvok was going to beam in. And so Tuvok beams in, and Seven of Nine just ambushes him and lays down a Vulcan neck pinch on him. And I'm like, oh, that's nice.
She's like,
it's good.
She's like,
I like it.
I see your logic, and I will raise you some hiding in the corner. And yeah, she beats the shit out of him. And again, instead of just killing him, throws him to the rear part of the shuttle, puts up a force field, and continues on her merry way deep into Bromar space.
And disables but does not destroy Tom's shuttle. Also important. So she finally gets to where she was going, and she thinks that it's supposed to be a Borg vessel, because she is being recalled by some kind of recall beacon. And it is a beacon that is put out there when a Borg drone gets lost to go to it. And she's clearly fighting off some impulse to like kill or assimilate Tuvok. She specifically decides she's not going to. And again, I really feel like Jerry Ryan sells a lot of her like conflict in this through her performance. She's very Borg-like at one, and then she becomes more emotional and afraid in another, and she has all these conflicting kind of emotions, and Tuvok sees that and starts to play at it, eventually gaining her trust enough that when they arrive at the planet, they go down together.
I call this guidance counselor Tuvok.
It's what he did with Cass, like when Cass was possessed by the sexy space vampire man.
Yeah, when he talks Coopte off his ledge, like Chakotay is the dude that you send in for other people to talk about their feelings.
Tuvok's the hostage negotiator.
Yeah, he is. He's also there to get his ass beat. He sees that this is very obviously not a Borg ship. This is very secure space. The idea that there's a cube just chilling out on this planet is ridiculous, and he sees that there's something very wrong with what she's putting out. I find all this very boring. This is like the second time she's gone rogue and tried to rejoin the collective. Second time, right? Because the first time was when she knocked Harry Kim into idiot security guy and knocked them both out, and then Kes had to pop him with a space ripple. I hope it's the last time we see it, because it's just a story that's not paying off for me. And yeah, she's shown all this PTSD stuff, but I also feel like it's too early in her development for her to be having like these deep human emotions where she's showing mercy and like, no, I'm not going to kill you. You're going to go back to Janeway and tell her I rejoined the collective and tell her thank you for all of her kindness and all this other stuff. And it's like, it really feels like they're making some compassionate leaps that should have been occurring deeper in the season.
I feel like her conflicted up and down nature makes sense. You know, she's vacillating in her emotions. I think I don't know if I faulted it. I think it makes sense, right? Like, she's unlocked all of this humanity in herself, and her ability to find a good lane with it should be tough for her. And so for her to go up and down makes more sense to me than her starting in a moderate position and then slowly ramping into a healthy, like, emotional state.
Spoken like a true apologist.
That's you just can't handle the truth. I'm a Terminatrix truther. The big revelation is that the ship that they find on the planet is called the Raven. And
hit the dun dun dun.
I don't have it in my soundboard for some reason right now. Or
spoken like a true apologist, Joe.
Hold on. Okay, it's dramatic piano. That's not working. What do we got here? We got. That's more like
worst
it.
Rim shot ever. Okay, just go. We don't need to go. Unless you got the kitten clip in there.
I got it.
These are all terrible. You just need to load up a bunch of Starship Troopers clips also for future reference. We need more kitten nose.
Would you like to know more? And definitely needs to be on our soundboard.
Oh yeah, and I'm doing my part. So Janeway figures out what's going on well in advance, because whatever this piece of crap that Harry and B'Elanna pulled out from underneath her bed, it turns out to be like a Borg Dear Diary. And they read it, and of course Harry gets creepy about what Seven of Nine's opinions are of his, and he's like, "Oh yeah, here's some description of these hallucinations she's been having, even though she told all of you guys all of the stuff already." And then Janeway's like, oh, "I've got it. It's a Raven. I know exactly what's going on," because the Raven was the ship that her family was in when they somehow flew all the fucking way out into the Delta Quadrant. Millions of years of travel that she made in the course of, how old was she? She was assimilated 7, 6.
Yeah, so she was 6 because she had her 6th birthday, which reveals later on.
Right. And I don't know.
She would be about 20. She'd be about 25 in canon at this point in her life.
So, they get to this planet deep in Bromar space, and there's some wreckage on the planet's surface, and they get in there, and it's Federation in nature, and it's her family's old ship. And Tuvok, who had agreed to go down with her because he didn't think that this was good, and because she said she was feeling scared, she brings him down, and they start poking around this thing. And we get a recap of how it is that the Hansons came to be assimilated. And you said a while ago that you think that that Seven of Nine's pre-Borg human story is the most boring part about her. And would you count all of this as part of that?
I think that there's another episode later on that basically conveys that the Hansons were possibly the worst parents of all time. And that's what I find so uninteresting. I find the idea of her being assimilated at a young age and what that opens up to talking about assimilation and how the Borg reproduce, quote unquote, in general, to be interesting. And so that part of her journey is interesting and having to have dealt with that. But yeah, her parents are the worst. I don't know how else to describe it. They took their child out into the middle of fucking nowhere in the galaxy, fucking chasing after Borg on purpose. Like, ugh.
They get on this thing. She starts poking around. She figures out this is what's going on. And surprise, surprise, the Bromar have come along, the Cleveland Bromars. Bromars. And they start lighting up the orbital site, or the crash site from orbit. Now, usually it takes one good photon torpedo to blow everything up. And this is a real testament of how crappy these guys' weapons are. Because they're laying multiple shots down on a 30-year-old Federation civilian ship that is rotting on the planet's surface, and they can't seem to do anything.
Would you agree in the scene leading up to that, though, that like her going through the emotion of reliving the experience was pretty good? Like, that's really the fulcrum of the whole thing. Like, they set that up specifically so she could have relive this traumatic experience, and that,
I've gotten very good in Voyager at watching things that I don't care about and not blaming the actor and just blaming a boring script. So yes, she conveys PTSD, and I think that Jerry Ryan does everything she could have done with this script. Again, it just feels like the world's slowest story with the most repetitions of she's so conflicted about rejoining the crew and this and that, and my Borg history. I'm over it. It's not even the 7th episode of the season yet, and I'm already done with all of this stuff. So
I actually agree with you completely. They've rung this bell so many times already, and they've only barely started the fucking season.
It doesn't seem, while she's doing any of this, like I didn't roll my eyes, and I didn't feel like she was trying to stretch and force me to laugh at a situation. Yes, looking back on it, she does do a good job of conveying someone who is fucked up and scared and confused. It's just, I don't care. At some point, Voyager shows up. I forget what happened exactly. Like if Tom sends off a distress call.
Yeah, they decide just to come across the border after Janeway figured it out, and they're like, "Fuck it, we got to go do this."
Janeway's like, "Oh yeah, Tom. I don't care. What am I thinking? I don't care about boundaries. Yeah, gun it."
They gun it. They run into Tom. They get obviously immediately found out that they're going to do this. Janeway's just like, fuck it, we're doing it. Shows up, disables all of the the Cleveland Bromans ships, and ultimately bails out Seven and Tuvok as the Raven slowly disintegrates after sustained bombardment from apparently the worst ships ever. And the episode just wraps on them deciding, okay, well, we can't cut through now because, we sort of started a war with these people we don't know. So we'll go
3
we'll
months
go
it is.
around. Yeah, guess we're gonna burn that 3 months off. And they have a scene where they wrap with Seven reflecting on her experience with Janeway back where they started, which is the Gimli free simulation of the Leonardo da Vinci's workshop. The concept here is that Seven is still trying to comprehend the fullness of what's happened to her in her life, and this has been something that she's learned from and grown from, and evidently nobody's learned any fucking lessons when it comes to limiting her computer access, because she just kind of accesses the captain's personal holodeck programs without asking, and right after she got done jacking a shuttlecraft and stunning a bunch of security guards
Speaking
and
of shuttlecraft, so they lost another shuttlecraft then, right?
Yeah, they don't mention the shuttlecraft that she hijacked. They don't mention it was destroyed. They don't mention if they recover it. It's just gone.
No big deal.
Just leave it there.
No big deal.
It's like, you guys, you know what, Cleveland Bromans, you could use an upgrade.
Here's your first round draft. It's a Type 6 shuttle. Enjoy. It's got a nice booty on it. I think you'll get good mileage out of this.
Don't Robert Griffin III this one. Don't run it out there for a playoff game it's not ready for. Don't do that.
Yeah, what Joe said. Sports. So the question we're left with is, how many second chances does Seven and I get? We know that Chakotay has free reign to fuck up and disobey and do whatever he wants as much as he wants, as does everybody else on the ship. How many times is your crazy Borg Terminatrix going to be allowed to flip out and endanger the entire crew as it tries to rejoin the murderous Borg cult?
I think that's actually becomes a bit of a open question later on. They fortunately don't ring this bell for a while, because the next few episodes we have, the next one I know we're gonna watch is a self-contained plot, doesn't have anything to do with this, and then the ones after that are probably the best Voyager episodes in most people's opinions.
Yeah,
I would definitely put them in my top 5. So we'll get back to this, but for now, let's just say she's on strike 2.
I'll give her a strike 3, because strike 1 would have been when she forced him into fluidic space and put him in. Well, whatever. That's pre-freeing. I didn't care for this episode, and I'm done with her conflicted am I Borg, am I human bullshit. I'm ready to move on. And I think this is way too much screen real estate to give any one character an entire episode where I'm being forced to sit there and watch Neelix teach someone how to eat. Shame on LeVar Burton for this one. I can't. I'm going to have to say this is a thumbs down for me.
I think that as I've talked to you about this, I liked it more than I disliked it. C, almost a C+. What are we watching next week?
What's amazing to me about this episode too is, like, I didn't even have half a page of notes on this thing, and we just went an hour and 15 minutes talking about it. So I don't know. There must have been something there worth talking about. But moving on, we're going to be going into season 4, episode 7, Scientific Method. We see Janeway with her face pressed into a toilet bowl seat, and the doctor, it looks like he's giving her like a Swedish massage. Says a string of bizarre illnesses afflicts Voyager. The Doctor and 7 of 9 uncover a team of alien researchers performing medical experiments. So there we've got 7 and 9 playing the Mary Sue again already. And we're going to be treated to a Next Generation retread, which is aliens doing secret medical experiments on the crew, which is unaware. So,
yeah, you pretty much nailed it, dude. This is the first of what will be many 7 of 9 Doctor team-ups. I dare say that as the show goes on, they become the main characters.
And I'll tell you what, man, right now, just based off of this episode, again, the amount of screen time and character development they gave a brand new character that is unprecedented. Like, my fear is that this show is going to become Star Trek 7 of 9.
I think that for a large part, it actually is. I think that your fear is well founded. There's certainly exceptions to that. I think that when the show is particularly good is when it knows when to pull back and when to go forward on that. But there's definitely going to be stretches where it's going to feel like, Jesus fucking Christ, who is the main character of the show? Is it the Terminatrix? Is this what we're doing now? I think that they find a nice groove with getting her and the Doctor into shit more often because, we know the Doctor is a solid force and there's a lot of potential there as far as getting those two characters, working together. But yeah, just stick with it, man. We're about to actually starkly after this next one starkly ramp up in quality for the rest of the season.
We need to, because this has been a very bad season so far, I think.
I kind of agree with you. I mean,
Revulsion
I felt like season 4 was better than what came before, but this first part has been like very bad. This hasn't been this bad since like the dregs of season 2. Like, nothing really good stands out. So,
well, season 3 set a high bar for me, and season 4 needs to unfuck itself with a quickness. So, all right, man, that's it for me.
All right, thank you for listening to Feature Please Hateful Voyage to the Delta Quadrant. We'll see you next week.